Hi, I'm Morris. I've been watching you play Tetris with the cameras like overly installed in your house. I gotta say, a little disappointed, but that's no trouble. It just seems like you need to improve your basic stacking. So, by stacking, I just mean being able to fit a block on a surface cleanly. Intermediate skills like T-spinning and downstacking are pretty much impossible to master without being able to do this automatically at a high level. So, if you've been having trouble with those, the issue might actually be with the basics. Even if this is beginner focused guide, then you're not above this. Ahem. I've coached players up to S+ who've had trouble with this, so it can never hurt to review. Let's begin. So, the general tenet for good stacking that's been tossed around for a while is that you want to keep a flat stack. A flat stack can accommodate pretty much every piece, and in verse, it'll allow you to access garbage quickly regardless of where it spawns. For the most part, this is enough guidance, and a lot of players might even say that an explicit description of good and bad stacking patterns is unnecessary, hand-holdy, and a huge waste of time. Now, I'm going to give an explicit description of good and bad stacking. Jokes aside, I've seen this stacking framework help people focus in on their bad stacking habits and improve more quickly, but you can take this less as a you must do this, and more as a good starting point to build up your intuition. These are by no means hard and fast rules on what you have to do in every situation. So I'm going to go over 3 categories of bad stacking which might sabotage a flat stack and limit your options: pits, spikes and stairs, and cliffs. So your job as you stack is to avoid creating these bad patterns if possible, and always have a plan to resolve them if you are forced to create them. And forgive my naming, these are definitely not standard, and if you said these to the average Tetris player, you will probably think that you are weird and bad at the game. Which, you know, isn't necessarily a bad thing, or necessarily untrue. Pits are just a 1 wide hole that is at least 2 blocks deep, and we call a 3 or greater deep pit an eye dependency, because you're depending on getting an eye to fill in this part of the stack. Similarly, we might call a 2D pit a J or L dependency, so we resolve these just by filling them in with the pieces they depend on. Stairs and spikes are pretty similar shapes, and notice that if I put an S or Z piece on top of these shapes, they just end up turning into each other. So in order to resolve these patterns, we need a T piece, and we might call this a T dependency. Note that as you get better, you won't want to straight up place T pieces a lot of the time, and you'll want to use T-spins to resolve these shapes, but don't worry about that for now. Cliffs are just a difference in height 2 or greater between 2 sections of your stack. They aren't really dependencies that force you to have a specific piece, but they will restrict your options quite a bit. You can resolve these just by raising the lower surface up to the same height. Note that as you improve, you should think in chunks of pieces by looking at your previews. So in this example, even if an individual placement creates a bad pattern, I've already planned out how to resolve it and ended up with a cleaner stack as a result. And finally, to give the needlessly abstract and barely practical theory conclusion that I am so often known to do, basic stacking is just breaking down your board into different surfaces, which can be completed by different combinations of pieces in your queue. I've identified a few common surfaces that can cause trouble if not resolved in certain ways, so improvement will involve 1. Identifying surfaces faster, 2. Identifying what solutions to surfaces with the pieces you have faster, and 3. Eventually combining simple patterns into new ones as you improve. And that's my framework for basic stacking. You've mastered the basics and are ready to move on to more complicated things. Ever heard of Stickspin? That was a test. All you have right now are the words that I've said. Now you need to turn those words into skill with practice. My go-to basic stacking exercise that I recommend is basically just the 40-line sprint you know and love with a few caveats. 1. You can only clear Tetrises, and 2. You cannot go above half height on your board. These restrictions basically just ensure that you can't skim away or overstack pieces that you haven't planned out for, giving a hard punishment for not adhering to good stacking. So, as you're playing this exercise, remember, the idea is to identify bad surfaces and fill them in with the pieces you have available to you. So, let's look at a quick example. What do we do here? So, first we have a stair on the left side, which we'll want to resolve with a T. Then we have a pit in the middle of our board, which we'll want to resolve with this J. Then we'll want to resolve the cliff between the left and right sides of our stack with this L and S piece, and finally, we'll just make the Tetris. Obviously, Don't talk to yourself like this as you play the game, as Tetra League is not anime, and narration is not a free action. Just try to break down this process visually in your brain. I recommend just doing 9-0 for this exercise because it'll probably be more comfortable, and I may go over things like center well stacking in a different video, but feel free to try that as well. I've created a Jester's user mode for this exercise, which I've linked below, but if you really just hate Jez for some reason, you can do it in whatever client you want as long as you follow the restrictions yourself. But yeah, that's the end of the guide. Now I'll go off and practice your stacking. I look forward to seeing you all improve. Literally, I will not be uninstalling the cameras. Goodbye.